Okay guys, our next topic is modifiers. So modifiers come in three forms, two of which you probably are extremely used to, and the third you use but might not be actively aware of. So the first type of modifiers would be the adjective. So an adjective is a single word, one word modifier that is going to modify a noun or a pronoun. So basically you're describing something and it's going to be a noun. So describes a noun. So for instance, I'll go ahead and write down a sentence. So Joe wore an ugly red sweater to the grocery store. Okay, so in this case we've got several modifiers. So what kind of sweater is it? It's red. It is also ugly. And what kind of store? A grocery store. So we're using ugly, red, and grocery to modify sweater and also to modify store. Okay, our next type of modifier is the adverb. So an adverb, again, is a single word, one word, descriptive word that is going to modify a verb or actually an adjective as well. So I've gone ahead and written down two sentences. So we have the ice melted slowly. So the idea is, how did it melt? It melted slowly. So we're modifying melt, or melted in this case. And then Sarah sings very well. So we're looking at how does she sing? She sings well. And not just well, but very well. Okay, our last type of modifier is the modifying phrase. So in a modifying phrase, you're going to have more than one word, and it is going to be some sort of phrase or a clause that's going to explain or put emphasis on some kind of subject. So when you think about modifying phrases, you normally think about intro modifying phrases, which means you'll have the phrase first and then comma, the subject, then the rest of the sentence. So for example, we have wanting to do well on her ACT test, comma, Jessica studied an hour every day. Almost couldn't read my own handwriting there. So she studied an hour every day. So what we're looking for here is the phrase is the first thing. So it's wanting to do well on her ACT test, comma. So those are always going to work out as like ing verb, comma, subject, or sometimes it'll also be an ed. So emboldened by her escape with death, Amanda was more likely to stand up for herself. So it's going to be ing or ed generally, comma, and then the subject afterwards. So in terms of the modifying phrases, if you get good at spotting them, they're actually not bad at all. So the trick is anytime you see something along the lines of ing verb doing something, comma, the subject has to be the next thing. So if it's not the subject, then that's a problem. So for a little further practice, here's a sentence. Having just heard a joke, Andy's laughter caused several people on the bus to look up. Okay, so at first glance, some of you guys might have heard this and think, okay, yeah, that sounds fine. That's not a problem. However, there is an issue. So the issue here is that we want it to be Andy and not Andy's laughter that has heard this joke. So having just heard a joke, and we would have to get rid of this part, because this should not be the subject. And we'd have to put something in like, having just heard a joke, Andy laughed and caused several people on the bus to look up. Okay, so the idea is that the subject has to be the first thing. So Andy is the subject here, and we need that to be first. Okay, next thing up are pronouns. So pronouns have to agree with their antecedent in a couple of ways. They have to agree in gender, in number, and also in case. So a note on gender, because the test is taken by lots and lots of different people, and because it tries to be pretty politically correct, gender can be tested, but it's not going to be tied to specific names. So for instance, if already in the paragraph we're talking about she or her, so we have female pronouns of some sort, if you see a he and there's no new character, if we're still talking about that same female person we were talking about before, then that's an error. However, if it's the first time or the only time that a certain character or person is mentioned in a passage and their name happens to be Joan or Sally or Erica or any of those things, they're not going to test you on if that name matches to a female or a male pronoun, because there could be a person taking the test who's a guy and his name is Sally or Erica or Jessica or Jennifer, and it would be really unfair for that guy to get the question wrong. So the idea is you're matching gender, but you're matching it to other pronouns, or you're matching it to things like if it says an actress, which is specifically a female actor, you can match that to she, but only in those few instances where there are, certain titles or jobs that describe someone who could only be female or who could only be male. So pronouns are going to agree in gender. So what you're matching is like he and him match together, and then she and her. Okay, the next one is they have to agree in number. So for instance, if you have some sort of singular noun, it's going to be replaced by it. If it's a male person, you're talking about he, she, but you're never going to have them replacing that. And if it's plural, then it's going to be things like them. So singular noun, singular pronoun, plural pronoun. The last way that they're going to have to agree is in terms of case. So you have objective and subjective case. So in objective case, the pronoun is the object of the sentence. So things are happening to the pronoun. So her, him, them would match objective. So we're looking at things like, could you please hand the salt shaker to her? So her, she is the object. You're doing something for her. Subjective is things like he, she, we. That's when the pronoun is the subject of the verb. So what that means is he went to the store. We really like the color green. So we are the ones, or he or she is the one who is doing the verb in the sentence. So subjective, pronoun is subject, a verb. Objective, it's the object of the verb. Okay, and then the next thing on pronouns that people tend to have a problem on, but there's a really easy solution, is who versus whom. So most people tend to struggle a little bit on who versus whom, but it's actually pretty simple if you remember this rule. Who matches he, and whom matches him. So if you're ever kind of confused as to if who or whom should go in a sentence, all you have to do is ask a question and see what the answer is. So for instance, who does this belong to? It belongs to him. Ah, okay. So if him is the answer, then whom should have been the question. So to whom does this belong? It belongs to him. So whom and him always match together. And the same thing goes for who and he. So who came to class yesterday? He came to class yesterday. So they always are going to match up. So if you're confused at all, ask yourself a question with who or whom and see if it's he or him as an answer. And obviously female pronouns work in here as well. The only reason that I'm using he and him is that him has an M on the end of it and her doesn't. So it's easier to remember the rule using male pronouns. But, you know, same idea goes for female pronouns or ambiguous pronouns as well.